He was a man barely 5'5", who nonetheless became the greatest in the world, a man who deceived a referee and an entire nation with one hand, and minutes later scored a goal many call the most beautiful in football history. A man loved by hundreds of thousands in Naples and Buenos Aires alike, who nearly died from his own addictions more than once, long before they finally killed him. This is the story of Diego Armando Maradona, a boy from a poor neighborhood who became both a god and a wreck, sometimes both at once. Diego Armando Maradona was born on October 30th, 1960, at the Policlinico Evita Maternity Hospital in the city of Lanús, in the province of Buenos Aires. He grew up, however, in the nearby neighborhood of Villa Fiorito, an impoverished settlement on the southern edge of the Argentine capital, where, by his own later account, there was no running water, no electricity, and no telephone. He was the fifth child and first son of Diego Maradona Sr., nicknamed Chitoro, his wife Dalma Salvadora Franco, known to everyone as Doña Tota. Before he was born, they already had 3 daughters. After him came 2 younger brothers, Hugo and Raúl, both of whom would later become professional footballers themselves. The family originally came from the province of Corrientes in the northeast of the country and had moved to Buenos Aires in the early 1950s in hope of a better life. Maradona was thus one of 8 siblings who grew up in modest circumstances, but, as he would later describe it himself, in a family full of love and closeness. This combination of poverty and strong family bonds would later become one of the central themes of his entire story. When he was 3 years old, he received a football as a birthday gift from a cousin. From that moment on, the ball became his constant companion. He played with it in the streets, in the yard, wherever he could. When he didn't have a proper ball, he improvised with a bundle of rags, or even an orange, which he could reportedly juggle without damaging it. At the age of 8, he was noticed by a scout from the local club Estrella Roja, where he played in his neighborhood. His talent was already so striking that people beyond the neighborhood began to talk about him. At the age of 10, he joined the youth team Los Cebollitas, part of the Argentinos Juniors Club. With this team, he went on a remarkable run of 136 matches without a single defeat, an incredible number that got him into newspapers long before he turned professional. During halftime breaks of Argentinos Juniors senior team matches, he would perform ball-juggling shows in front of the crowd, a small boy who managed to capture the attention of an entire stadium. At the age of 15, he made his debut for the senior team of Argentinos Juniors, becoming the youngest player in the history of Argentina's top division. Just a few months later, in early 1977, he also wore the jersey of the Argentine national team in a friendly match against Hungary. The following year, 1978, Argentina hosted the FIFA World Cup. Despite Maradona's immense talent, national team coach Cesar Luis Menotti decided not to include the 17-year-old in the final squad. For young Diego, it was a heavy blow. He watched his country's triumph only as a spectator. At Argentinos Juniors, he ultimately played 5 seasons, scoring 116 goals in 166 matches. It was during this period that he also met Claudia Villafañe, his future wife. When the time came for the next step in his career, he had several lucrative offers to choose from, including the highest bid from River Plate. In the end, however, he chose Boca Juniors, the club closer to his heart. At Boca Juniors, Maradona made an impact almost immediately. In his first season, he helped the club win the Argentine League title. His extraordinary dribbling and goals were drawing increasing international attention. After the 1982 World Cup in Spain, a defining moment in his career arrived. In June 1982, he transferred to FC Barcelona for what was then a world record fee of £5 million. His time at Barcelona was meant to be a triumphant entry onto the European stage, but it ultimately became one of the hardest periods of his career. As early as December 1982, just months after his arrival, he was sidelined by hepatitis, which kept him out of action for several months. Some observers still believe today that it may actually have been a sexually transmitted disease, although hepatitis was the official explanation at the time. An even harder blow came in the 1983-84 season. In a match against Athletic Bilbao, defender Andoni Goicoechea, who would later become known as the Butcher of Bilbao, brutally fouled him from behind. Maradona suffered a broken ankle, and his career was briefly in serious jeopardy. Nevertheless, he managed to return to the pitch after roughly 3 months, a recovery many considered almost miraculous. It was during his time in Barcelona that, according to later accounts, he first came into contact with cocaine, a substance that would go on to accompany and destroy him for the rest of his life. His relationship with the club's leadership, particularly with President Josep Luis Núñez, grew increasingly tense. It all came to a head in the 1984 Copa del Rey final against Athletic Bilbao, where a mass brawl broke out between the players of both teams after the final whistle, with Maradona himself getting involved. Shortly after this incident, he forced his way out of the club. In the summer of 1984, Maradona transferred to Naples in Italy for what was then a world record fee of approximately $7.6 million, though some sources cite as much as $11.8 million. Even before he had played a single match, the club had already sold around 60,000 season tickets. Naples was waiting for him as its savior. Success, however, didn't come immediately. In his first season, Napoli finished 8th. Gradually, though, the team improved, and by 1986 it was fighting for the top of the table. That summer of 1986 became pivotal for Maradona for an entirely different reason: the World Cup in Mexico. In the quarterfinal against England, he scored 2 goals that would go down in history in completely different ways. The first, later named the Hand of God, he scored with his hand, yet the referee allowed it. Just minutes later, he scored a second goal, later declared by FIFA the goal of the century, a solo run across half the pitch, beating several English players and the goalkeeper along the way. Argentina went on to win the World Cup title, defeating West Germany in the final. He carried this form into the club season as well. Napoli, with a strengthened squad, won its first ever Italian league title in the 1986-87 season. For a city that had until then lived in the football and economic shadow of northern Italian clubs, it was an event of historic proportions. With Napoli, he later won one more Italian championship in 1990 and the UEFA Cup in 1989. But alongside the sporting success, problems were growing in parallel. During his time in Naples, Maradona's name became increasingly linked to the Neapolitan Mafia, the Camorra. According to numerous later accounts and investigative reports, his weekends followed a cycle: cocaine use from Sunday through Wednesday, often in the company of people connected to the Camorra, followed by several days of detox, so he'd be fit to play again by Sunday. It's also said that the club, when necessary, used other players' urine to help him pass doping tests. In March 1991, a random doping test caught him using cocaine. The Italian Football Federation handed him a 15-month ban. Shortly before that, he had also been accused of trafficking drugs worth approximately $840,000 through Rome's Fiumicino airport. Napoli, then, is where his story fell apart, celebrated as an athlete, yet personally at rock bottom. The year 1990 brought another disappointment. In the World Cup final in Italy, Argentina lost to Germany. After returning from his ban in 1992, Maradona was significantly weakened, both physically and mentally. He was gaining weight, and his performances were merely a shadow of previous years. He had a brief spell at Sevilla with little sporting impact, and in 1993 he returned to Argentina, to Newell's Old Boys. The following year, 1994, gave the national team one last chance. World Cup qualification had nearly been a disaster, including a humiliating 5-0 home defeat to Colombia. And coach Alfio Basile desperately called Maradona back. He helped the team fight their way through a playoff against Australia and reach the tournament in the USA. At the tournament, he appeared surprisingly fit, and after a win over Greece, he celebrated his goal with an iconic, almost furious scream into the camera, a moment still circulating online to this day. A few days later, following the match against Nigeria, he was selected for a random doping test. The urine sample came back positive for ephedrine, a banned stimulant. FIFA's General Secretary, Sepp Blatter, personally announced the result at a press conference on June 29, 1994. Maradona was immediately expelled from the tournament, bringing his international career to a definitive end after 91 matches and 34 goals. Explanations have varied ever since. Maradona himself claimed in his autobiography that it was an American version of an energy drink bought for him by his trainer without knowing its different composition. Others pointed to Julio Grondona, president of the Argentine Football Association, and possible failures by the medical team. Regardless of the interpretation, the scandal permanently damaged his public image. After his expulsion from the 1994 World Cup, Maradona returned to Boca Juniors, where he played out his final years with significantly limited physical abilities after years of a hard lifestyle. He officially announced his retirement from playing in 1997 on the eve of his birthday. After ending his playing career, Maradona moved into coaching, though his tenure was marked by the same unpredictability as his playing years. He briefly led Deportivo Mandiu in 1994 and Racing Club in 1995. From 2008 to 2010, he was head coach of the Argentine national team, a period full of controversy that ended with elimination at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa in the quarter-final against Germany. He later worked in the United Arab Emirates with Al Wasl, then Fujairah, followed by Mexico's Dorados de Sinaloa from 2018 to 2019, and finally from September 2019 with the Argentine club Gimnasia y Esgrima La Plata, where he remained until his death. Maradona's private life after retirement was just as turbulent as his sporting career. In 1984, he married Claudia Villafañe, with whom he had two daughters, Dalma and Giannina. The marriage, strained by the pressures of fame and his addictions, ended in divorce in 2003. He later acknowledged additional children, including a son, Diego Fernando, from a brief relationship after the divorce, as well as a son, Diego Armando Maradona Jr., known as Dieguito, whose mother was the Italian Cristiana Sinagra. He publicly denied paternity for years before finally acknowledging him. His health problems accumulated over the years. In 2000, he nearly died of cardiac arrest caused by a cocaine overdose. He was hospitalized again in 2000 and 2004 for heart problems, requiring a respirator during the second hospitalization. In 2005, he underwent gastric bypass surgery for severe obesity. In 2007, he was hospitalized once more, this time due to the effects of alcoholism and hepatitis, after which he underwent psychiatric treatment for alcohol addiction. Despite all these problems, he remained publicly active. In 2014, he faced accusations of assaulting his then-girlfriend, Rocio Oliva, though he was not criminally prosecuted. His public appearances, such as at the 2018 World Cup in Russia, were accompanied by media speculation about his physical and mental state. In early November 2020, just days after celebrating his 60th birthday, Maradona was hospitalized for anemia, depression, and dehydration. Examinations revealed a blood clot on his brain, a subdural hematoma, for which he underwent surgery. The procedure was successful, and about a week later, on November 12th, he was discharged to recover at a private residence near Tigre, outside Buenos Aires. On Wednesday, November 25, 2020, He suffered cardiac arrest in the morning. Paramedics at the scene were unable to revive him. He died at the age of 60. A later autopsy revealed that his heart was covered in fat and blood clots, and that he had damaged liver and kidneys. The case also raised questions about the quality of care he received during his home recovery. An investigation ultimately charged 7 medical professionals with negligent homicide. The first trial ended in a mistrial due to a procedural error. He died exactly 4 years after the death of Fidel Castro, with whom he shared a personal friendship, and exactly 15 years after the death of another football legend, George Best. He was buried in a private funeral at the Jardín de Bellavista Cemetery on the outskirts of Buenos Aires, after thousands of people had gathered in the streets of the capital the day before to say goodbye. The Argentine government declared a 3-day period of national mourning. Diego Maradona remains one of the few figures in a genuine debate over who was the greatest footballer of all time. The only names seriously mentioned alongside him are Pelé and, in the last decade, Lionel Messi. In 2000, FIFA honored him with the title of Player of the Century. But his story isn't just about goals and trophies. It's the story of a boy from a poor neighborhood who reached the top of the world through his own talent, and at the same time, the story of a man whom that same world, fame, and addiction ultimately cost his health and his life. It is precisely this combination of genius and vulnerability that explains why his name remains so powerful to this day, in Argentina, in Naples, and everywhere people love football.